Hello and welcome. It's a nation going to commit suicide, he says. We're too stupid to survive in an evolutionary world. Those cutting words from one of America's most respected political and literary thinkers doesn't bode well for a nation currently celebrating the election of its first black president. So what hope is there for America? Well, certainly no one was more critical of the Bush years than Gore Vidal, an American cultural icon. Mr. Vidal began writing his first novel at the age of 19 during World War II and has been an outspoken voice on politics, history and culture ever since. His legion of fans around the world are known as Vidalophiles, and Gore Vidal joins us from Miami. On this show, we ask him how much of an impact the US election might actually make in a country he sees as having lost its values of its founding fathers. Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Just log on to livestation.com/AJE, download the software allowing you to enter the chat room, and then take part. Now, we also welcome your phone calls on the show as well. Gore Vidal, welcome to the show, sir.
Good to have you. Told which lens to look at.
Just straight ahead, sir. Now, you called the Bush era the worst phase in our history. Are you optimistic about the future under President Barack Obama?
Well, he could not help but be anything but better. And I loved it when they started calling him an elitist, you know. Somebody with his background could hardly claim to be Oxbridge or whatever, though he was Harvard and Yale. No, I think what puzzles, particularly Republicans, who are very strange, you know, it's not a political party, it's a mindset. And they know that Franklin Roosevelt was the devil, and they know that a lot of undesirable people have arrived in their country. I wish we could get rid of them, you know, send them away somewhere. Let's send them all to Alaska. I spent 3 years in Alaska in World War II, and I can't say that I was the better for it. I ended up with a titanium knee, whatever that means, but I'm sure there's an omen there. No, I think we have another shot again with Obama. I think calling him an elitist meant that, you know, people suspect that he can read the New York Times without moving his lips, and that he is an educated person. He made a perfectly nice joke to the famous, infamous plumber, the friend of the Piltdown lady from Alaska. And he made a perfectly good joke. The guy was saying, well, if Obama gets a president, I just don't know that I want to make any more money, as if he ever was going to do that anyway. And so suddenly it got clear Obama was trying to be polite and was treating him as an equal, always a mistake with some of these folks. And so he said, well, you're not going to tax me for all the money I'll be making with my new business, which he hasn't got yet. And Obama said, well, you know, he made a joke. It's just spreading money around, isn't it? Well, that's a nice joke, which takes for granted that any educated person would know that that was something that was part of Karl Marx's doctrine. And he's making fun of it. Well, this guy's too dumb to know who Karl Marx is, and which he shares with most of the country. So I thought Obama's got to look out, because, you know, Adlai Stevenson, who was also a very superior man, intellectual, was always making jokes about which people never understood, you know, because we don't know any history, we don't know any economics. We have the world's worst educational system for the people at large.
I'll ask you about that. You know, we have BART on the line from New Zealand, so let's get our call in from across the world. BART, what would you like to ask?
Yes, do you know of a global system or theory that will work more efficiently than the system that we're currently using?
In the U.S.?
Well, that is a great challenge, sir. And give me a few days and I can probably come up with it. 7 days will do. One of my predecessors made everything in 7 days. I think I could work it out, yes.
Well, you know, sir, you've been saying for years
unless I end up with Shiva.
You've been saying for years that America's become less democratic now. Hasn't this last election proved perhaps the voice of the American people can actually be heard?
Well, yes, it's the first time in my lifetime it was heard. I mean, we've had grumbles over the years, and I'm one of the grumblers. But no, I thought this was something new for us. I was brought up in the city where you are speaking from, and where I spent most of my childhood in Washington, D.C. And it was, you know, it was a totally black city in those days. And I used to wonder, and I would drive to the Senate with my grandfather and a black driver called Davis. Davis was very shrewd. And Davis was always talking about the day would come when his folk would be noticed. Until then, they were, as Ralph Ellison called them in his book, the invisible men. And I was looking forward to having it happen, and suddenly it did. I started out for Hillary. And then I realized that this was not her time, and that Obama represented a whole change in American life. And you have to be brought up in Washington to realize where there was segregation, all of it brought in by a president much admired by American imperialists, the dreaded Woodrow Wilson. He brought in Jim Crow. He brought in all kinds of terrible things because Mrs. Wilson, the second Mrs. Wilson, did not like our dusky cousins. And so she made it life difficult for everybody.
Well, so, you know, we had an email that came in from Lynn in Australia, if I may put this to you. Lynn writes in saying, do you think Obama can break away completely from the Bush phase and chart a new path of integrity without being a super bully? I wonder what manacles you think President Obama might wear.
Well, I think only of his own making. He is obviously, you know, that campaign was superb. I followed 100 campaigns in my time on this wonderful planet, and it was the best campaign of all. Jack Kennedy couldn't organize anything. He's being compared, not quite favorably, with the fallen hero. Well, Jack had great charm, and I don't think he'll ever have Jack's charm, which comes with being the son of the Lord of the Manor. But I think this is an interesting time for us, and we're going to hear from 13 million otherwise fairly silent people.
It was interesting, sir. You know, you said that perhaps the manacles are only the ones of his own making, but this email that came in from a regular viewer, S. Anoma, in Sydney, Australia, asks, or says, in this presidential election, the Americans have participated in the democratic process and voted in large numbers to elect Obama. But how can individuals compete with large corporations and other lobby groups? Can any president be free of that?
Well, you can be if the nation has gone broke. Every time I look around, I'm in a city that I don't know terribly well, Miami. And, you know, houses have been foreclosed on. Money is gone. The automobile business, which was ghastly as those cars were that were made for le peuple, as by, you know, types in Detroit, thinking that you could sell any car to an American if it was big enough and wasteful enough. No, I think there has been a great change with this election, and I am delighted, and because now we can argue, you know how sententious the Indians of India are, but we are now the second largest democratic republic.
You also predicted, sir,
India's
that
always been number one.
Well, you predicted a couple of years ago that America's economy would collapse, and I wonder, in your opinion, how much worse you think things could get.
Well, you know, as a political forecaster, I'm not much. I'm a master of the obvious. And if we're running out of money, fighting two provoked by us wars, or provoked by a mysterious little president, largely brain dead, this has been bad for us. He's wrecked the army, he's wrecked the infrastructure of the country. It's weird to watch him work because he always finds the worst person to take, you know, do an important job. If he wants to be a diplomat, he sends Mr. Bolton to the United Nations, who's already spoken loudly against having a United Nations at all. So In an eerie way, there was a nice play by Dürrenmatt. Although he's Swiss, don't be prejudiced against him. He's gets wonderful ideas. It's about a Roman emperor who becomes emperor of Rome in order to dissolve the empire on grounds of morality. And I did the English adaptation of this play. It did not go over too well with Broadway, but it was a good play. And this is so like the plot of Romulus der Grosse, which was this German title.
Interesting, sir. You joked earlier on about where Republicans might go, as in Alaska. Obviously, Barack Obama's inherited a fairly tough situation as president, with the economy and so on. This email that came in from here in New York, here in the USA, from Frederick Chen says, "It's Barack Obama's America now. Will it be Sarah Palin's in 2012?"
Oh, that is, there are always gentlemen who are looking for a dominatrix. And she's clearly one out of Freud, a Kraft Ebing, I see her. With those great square teeth, and gotcha! No, she is one of the, America is famous for producing, crashing bores. Well, she's just about taken the prize.
Is there any
There's
danger?
no one duller than that woman. Hmm?
Is there any danger we might be expecting too much, though, from a President Obama?
Oh, I expect everything. He's ambitious, He doesn't mean to screw it up. And he's obviously someone who can understand a cautionary tale. We had in Bush, Mr. W. Bush, we had a president who was not interested in governance. This has never happened before. We have nothing to judge him by. He just had no interest. He wanted to be numero uno because he was the runt of the family litter, and his father was no great brain before him. So he's going to outdo his father. He was going to start his own war, which he did. It was so illegal as he was marching along with the camera right behind him, and he said, "I'm a wartime president. I'm a wartime president. Hey, I'm a wartime president." I would have sent for the men in white then and taken him to St. Elizabeth's. I hope you come to know that beautiful establishment in downtown Washington for the mad.
Mr. Gore Vidal, a real honor and pleasure speaking with you. I hope to speak with you again sometime soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll be joined by Mark Schneider of the International Crisis Group to discuss the next administration's focus on Afghanistan. As we pause, let me remind you can join the conversation with your questions and comments by going to livestation.com and entering the chat room. You can see the debate taking place there right now. We'll be right back.